I apologize in advance, but this is going to be a Captain Obvious type of video where I say nothing particularly innovative, but I simply can't do otherwise because it's driving me to the brink of insanity. So here's the thing. I was recently reading a short history of Japan and came across quite a familiar pair of sentences. The chapter was detailing the social structure of medieval Japan, which was pretty much what one would expect for the time, with feudal lords on top, followed by knights, priests, and farmers. Interestingly enough, traders and merchants, people dealing with money, found themselves only slightly above the so-called burakumin caste, which was the lowest of them all, made up mostly of executioners, undertakers, and butchers. Now, a couple of months ago, I read a short history of China where I found exactly the same thing. Merchants, peddlers, and moneylenders occupied the absolute bottom of the social ladder as they were considered to be contributing the least to society. Now, that shouldn't be too surprising given the proximity of both cultures, and especially given the fact that China was considered the center of the universe by its neighbors and tributaries. So maybe this peculiar merchant hating business so alien to our culture today is a particularly East Asian social quirk? Maybe. Except, hold on just a quick sec. I wasn't paying much attention in school, but I do remember that in medieval Europe, for example, dealing with money as a profession was considered such a dirty business that it was famously relegated exclusively to the Jewish population, who weren't allowed to do much of anything else. The Catholic Church was quite explicit in its prohibition of the practice of lending money. Obviously, some people and organizations still did that, most famously the Knights Templar, but in terms of medieval morality, things were pretty clear. Now, this is the point where one would have to try to be ignorant to not notice a pattern. Double negation. Anyway, these completely different societies with different historical trajectories and different sets of religious beliefs held exactly the same views about these specific professions, and they did so before they came in serious contact with each other. Hmm. It almost feels like organized societies, wherever they might be located, instinctively realize that people who are primarily profiting from other people's labor don't really contribute to society all that much, but rather take from it. Sort of like everybody inherently knowing that murder and theft are just plain wrong. And if we think about it, it does make a lot of sense. Because what really lies at the essence of trading? Oddly enough, we almost never ask ourselves this basic question. You didn't really invent or make anything, you just have to sell it. And you have to sell it for far more than it's actually worth. Otherwise, you just won't make a profit. In other words, you have to inflate its value as much as you can, which, if we're using a bit less polite words, means you basically have to lie, swindle, and scam somebody. Hardly honorable behavior. Obviously, money lending, aka banking in modern terms, is even worse. People of the past knew this all too well. Since then, however, we have completely flipped the script. Against all odds, behavior that used to unanimously be considered parasitic has been elevated into the ultimate virtue. The system we came to live in had to make sure this outrageous moral shift succeeds, which it did. That's why people will proudly call themselves stock traders, hedge fund managers, and entrepreneurs these days. Which finally brings me to the top of this horrific pyramid of shame, the billionaire class. You might object that billionaires are not peddlers and moneylenders, but that's actually exactly what they are. Much as the mythology of the day tries to convince us that these people are some sort of genius level inventors and thus entitled to their obscene wealth, that's just not the case. Elon Musk didn't invent the electric car. He didn't even invent the company that's selling it for him. Everybody knows that Steve Jobs, the big daddy of tech bros, wasn't a wunderkind of engineering himself. He didn't actually know how to make anything.
Like he just kind of came in like, I want my whole music collection in that phone. Get on it! And then all these nameless, faceless guys made it happen. And then they have the big nerd concert and he goes out there by himself.
Even the billionaire tech bros, such as Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, came up with a piece of tech or software of questionable social value and then simply bought out the rest of the competition. Well, at least with these folks, the folks that I just mentioned, as tasteless as they are, you can point to something semi-tangible. The vast majority of other billionaires belong to the depressing realm of haggling over values of companies and products they haven't created themselves. They are nothing more than a set of entitled passengers we have to schlep around on our backs. It's no wonder then that studies consistently show an unusually high degree of psychopaths sitting on top of the business world. And these are the people we choose to dance around like they brought us the gift of fire of something. In more ways than one, the modern day billionaire is a particularly unappealing and gross creature. The wealthiest of the past at least tried to cultivate the appearance of caring for the common good. They built libraries, hospitals, and established funds and programs for kids. The unhinged billionaires of today feel no need to pussyfoot around. They're too busy serving at the altars of their awful narcissistic vanity projects.
This moment motivates you to push deeper into the cosmos.
Hell yes.
Moreover, they have no culture, no taste, no class, and are just the least cool people you will ever lay your eyes on. But even if that wasn't the case, even if we had a total Rizzler out there, an actual Bruce Wayne, the fact that billionaires exist at all is a testament of our utter collective failure. Because the super rich are ripping away the social fabric in a very basic sense that literally anybody on the planet can relate to, which is, why would you slave away in a crappy job for 40 years, struggling to make ends meet, barely covering your rent, and putting food on the table, while at the same time 3 people hold more wealth than the bottom 50% of the richest country on the planet? Let's repeat. 3 people have more money than almost 200 million of their American compatriots put together. None of these 3 cured cancer, by the way. And since capitalism is a zero-sum game, that fact is precisely why you can't have a nice life. Because how does this make you want to participate in the project we call society? How is any of this remotely fair? Well, the usual argument is that these people made something out of nothing. They came up with something ingenious, completely by themselves. They are self-made. Really? Let's see. So Jeff Bezos had a bright idea, and then like a biblical prophet, he went into the desert completely alone, and after 20 years he returned with Amazon and $200 billion in his pocket? Now that would have been self-made. In this case, I would have been all for him to keep whatever he's got in the piggy bank. But he didn't do that. First, he was delivered by a doctor, then raised by his parents, educated by his teachers, and cultivated by his peers. When he did establish his awful business, he didn't just trade with himself. He had to sell his stuff to other people. Emphasis on other people. Like any of us, without the nurture, the knowledge, and the continuous help of others, he wouldn't be a proper human being. And yet, it is obviously in the interest of every single billionaire out there to peddle this borderline psychopathic myth about their exceptional talents that merit exceptional wealth. No matter how transparently absurd and stupid, they're never going to relent on this idea because their existence depends on it. And so they do everything in their power to swarm our media with this gobbledygook. And if that doesn't work out, they simply buy the media. And here's where things get really depressing. Because it's not just the fact that we are lapping this vomit up, it's the hollowing effect it has on our culture. We are resigned to not just the fact that these greedy muppets are lording over us, but also to the fact that the culture is trying to shape us to try and be like them. No wonder then that cheap copies of dedicated worshippers, caricatures like Andrew Tate, are proliferating online, poisoning susceptible young minds with their hustle culture mental diarrhea. I bet there's scores of talented young people who might have turned out to be nurses, teachers, engineers, or researchers, but are now reduced to making money by drop shipping hot garbage that nobody needs. It's a sad state of affairs, Tavarishi. But it doesn't have to be that way. I firmly believe that the billionaire class, whether we're talking about Musk, Gates, or Jay-Z, should be ridiculed, shamed, and above all, outlawed. Obviously, holding the latter view gets you labeled a mad Stalinist, but this is hardly revolutionary stuff. It's actually an extremely modest idea. It's a start. Just like we have agreed on the concept of minimum wage, a poverty line below which nobody should dip under because you simply cannot survive with less money than that, much in the same way we should institute a richest line above which you just can't go because it's clearly eating away at our societies. We would, of course, collectively decide what that amount would be, although personally I can't see why anyone should be paid more than 10 times the pay of the person who's paid the least. If you feel like being the CEO of a global corporation is your life's calling, by all means, go for it. Surely, though, you don't need $10 billion a year to motivate you to do the job that you love anyway, right? Now, let me end with a word of caution. Now, I'm no historian. Actually, I was a supremely lousy student. But I do remember the lecture of a particularly respected and awesome historian I attended once. He said that all catastrophic social upheavals began when the elites couldn't relate to the problems of ordinary people anymore.
Did this moment motivate you to push deeper into the cosmos?
Hell yes.
So, what do you think? We there yet?